Welcome to the channel. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about CleanSpark and Bitcoin. We're going to talk about the daily chart, the weekly chart. We'll also take a look at the open options interest for CleanSpark, not for Bitcoin though. And then we'll talk about price targets on both of them, talk about when I'm going to add, when I'm going to trim. We'll have a quick look at some news. I don't think there's too much news out whilst I was away, so we'll talk about some other topics if there's no news available, and we'll take a quick look at what's coming up on the macro calendar. Other than that, you can check out my live portfolio over on Etoro. The link for that is in the description down below. I'm just going to check up my portfolio progress for year to date here. Okay, so CleanSpark today. I did say I was going to do a CleanSpark video last week and I ended up not doing it, but it's Christmas time and you know what it's like. Things just get crazy with family visiting and I don't think I've ever drank so much tea in my life, so apologies. But I'm doing it now. So let's just take a look at the chart. So we've dipped a little bit lower than I initially thought we would. We're below the bull market band now. Not really surprising given the broad market is crapping its pants and crypto is crapping its pants. So it's been great buying opportunity. I don't see it as a long-term thing. Really, all of this started with JP and the FOMC meeting and all that stuff. Does one guy's, speech change your whole view on all the data that you've been looking at? I don't understand. This is a gross overreaction, I think. I've been buying the dip. I'm not buying the CleanSpark dip, but it's not because I don't want to, it's because I can't. I am now illiquid across all of my accounts. My crypto account's all in, my swing trading account's all in, my day trading account, all the money's used for that. My very specific account, I only hold about 5 assets in, that one's all in. Etoro's all in. That does bring me on to another thing that I wanted to talk about. In the new year, I will be starting again my monthly deposits. I stopped them for a while because I was ranging between 2 and 5% cash, and I didn't feel the need to add capital. That's going to change in the new year. I'm going to want to start adding and growing my account so I can level up as a PI as well. So I'm thinking probably between 5 and 10% monthly deposits. There's no obligation for anyone to also deposit at the same time. The new copy system will align our portfolios over time, so there's not a problem. So you don't have to add. I'm adding because I want to make more money. It's nothing to do with the copy system on that one. But CleanSpark chart, price is, it's holding up on this little volume shelf here. There is a lot of resistance support, I should say, underneath there at the 934 age. I never thought I would see CleanSpark down at this area again, especially given how well the company has been doing. But I'm reading it as a gift. I did manage to add going down here as well a little bit. So I mean, I'm only kind of fallen behind on about 5% on that. So even if price did go all the way down to $9 again, hopefully it stays there so I can make my monthly deposit on the 1st of January, and that will be excellent. But there are some things I don't like on the daily chart, and I think now we're getting a bit of a disconnect between the fundamentals of the company and the price action on this one. So if we look lower here on the MACD Plus, we are getting very close to a death cross. I don't like that. I don't want to see that be negative again, because that's going to be stuck there for a while if that happens. And given that it's the largest position in my portfolio, I don't really want to see it chopping around too long. I don't think it will. I think Bitcoin's going to start moving up to the upside again, but there's a lot of capitulation going on with the miners and the bond offerings. We'll talk about that in the news section as well. But to the downside, that's the next really big support, that red line on the chart. To the upside, when we do finally move back to the upside, this kind of $12 range is going to be one to break back through. I imagine the bull market band's going to stay kind of tied to that, and getting over that is going to be a bit of a fight unless we have something that really catapults price over. But in the long term, I still think it's massively undervalued. With Bitcoin valued where it currently is, I think CleanSpark should be at least double what it is now, if not more up towards I did write it down here, let me check, more up to kind of the $40-50 range, and that's not happened, but that's to do with the arbitrage play that's going on as well. My long-term plan on this one, I'll probably be mostly out. I did write it up here on the chart. Pull it down a bit more. boil it down a bit more. So $32 to 57, that's my kind of scale out window. But looking at the chart down here and given how weak price has been, probably going to be taking a bunch of it off at this measured move here at 27.71, just because the timeline now is going to get quite stretched unless CleanSpark has a really volcanic move. I don't want to be too heavy weighted on this one past April time, but we've still got time. I certainly wouldn't be buying any options on this one right now. But other than that, though, I'm probably going to be mostly out again between this kind of $35 area, and then again, pull this down, definitely probably all out at 43. There are some things about the company that we'll talk about in the news section that makes me want to hold it longer, but really, I don't know if the market's developed enough for those yet. I still think there's going to be downside to this one when Bitcoin rolls over. RSI, could go either way. We've got room. Flow is not great, but let's take a quick look at the weekly. See what we're cooking with. Ooh, my chart's gone all funny. Ooh. So we pointed out this cup and handle a few times that could be forming. It's a whopper, but it might not happen. Did I move this level? Yeah, so the blue line would be the cup and handle on that one. I think that's perfectly reasonable. It's just the downside action on this one and the amount of people that this stock sucks, I'm going to sell out of it, but institutions are still buying this hand over fist. Yes, the short interest is high, but when people want to close those positions, they buy back the stock. I think a lot of people forget that. MACDX Plus on this one looks a little bit better. Would like to see it continue to separate like that, but really the daily needs to perk up a little bit for that to happen. RSI could also go either way, and flow is looking a bit better on the weekly, but let's take a look at the options and see what the big boys are looking at on this one. Looking at the options interest then for CleanSpark, again, most of the volume's sitting at $13 for this week. It's Monday, so we've got plenty of time to go. I would love to see CleanSpark back at 13 by the end of the week. I'm getting a lot of slack for this position. I think it's going to play out in my favor in the long term. It has done several times already with this stock, and I'd love to see it do it again. The auto-generated resistance line on this one is coming at 15, which probably means the volume at that level is going to pick up. So these levels just mean the market makers are going to want to keep the price between these two levels. And you can see we're kind of I think pre-market, we're just slightly above this level. So market makers are going to want to be buying at this level if we dip below it again, and then up to 15. So it's quite a large range. The expected range is much smaller. But let's take a look for next week, see if we can see where the volume's generated. Okay, so a lot of people are fairly bullish on CleanSpark, and a lot of the shorts are probably going to end up wanting to close their positions. I don't see it going too much longer. Again, this plays into a bit of the arbitrage play on this one. If you don't know about what's been happening with the miners, so if you know about convertible bonds, there's a bit of an arbitrage play that the bigger institutions will use. They will want to buy the low risk bonds. Some of them are even 0%. They're pretty much risk free in some respects. And then they will short the stock so they can make profit either way. Now, what's happened with some of the miners is some of the other companies have done this convertible bond thing, and then rather than short that specific company, they've used other miners to open their short positions. And with CleanSpark being one of the last to do it, the short interest on that one's just gone through the roof. I mean, they're a bit late to the game, but I like the logic. I like the deal they put together as well. We'll talk about that in the news section. I think they did really well with it. But other than that, let's take a look out to January 2026 now then. See what the market's looking like now. 2026, I expect the bull market's probably going to be finished by then for Bitcoin. So it's probably a little bit redundant looking at this one. I'm just kind of being curious. Interestingly enough, there is quite a lot of strike higher, but I mean, the time some of these will be going to dust, I would expect to see more downside in the price action by January 26th. Now, that might not happen. This cycle's a little bit different. Obviously, we've got all the adoption kicking in and countries and governments buying and whatnot. So there might not be as much downside action, but it's still going to come. There will be capitulation when there's a large drop on that one. So something to bear in mind. Okay, so there was obviously the 0% bond offering, convertible bond offering that they had, and it had a lot of stipulations built into that. Rex Finance over on YouTube does a really good interview with Schultz and the CFO. There's a lot of juicy details in there. I'm going to probably look through my notes and read out some interesting bits for you, but I do recommend going and watching that because they're way more concise than I'm going to be, and they're much better at putting it into context. Key takeaways for me, though, are I'm excited about it. I don't know if some of the yield stuff is going to be of too much of a needle mover in 2025, but for the future, it kind of makes me question wanting to sell out completely of this stock, if I'm honest. But I think I probably will end up selling out everything and then rebuying at a lower price because I think capitulation is going to kick in on the downside of Bitcoin again on this one. But we'll see. Just scanning quickly through my notes. Blah, 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 blah. So I put on the screen as well the mining hash rate that's gone up over the years. Well, it's in quarters, but so in the interview they could just kind of start off by saying in 2020 they had no Bitcoin and now they're $1 billion worth and they're one of the bigger companies. So really the pace in which this company is growing, and we'll talk a little bit about their expansion plans, is just phenomenal. I think no one's really been paying too much attention because everyone's too busy with MicroStrategy and Mara. I don't actually really rate Mara too much, but I think they'll do fine. So the bond offering was a 0% coupon, capped call, so they're using that to share buyback and build up some infrastructure and stuff like that, and they will use that to kind of mitigate the short selling as well. So over 3 days they did 40 meetings with. So I mean that tells me this company has got this management team graft, and if that's what investors want, you want a management team that's out there working hard to benefit you. I mean, you might not see it in the short term because everyone else is too focused on, a good mining company is going to put a deal together like this and then just buy Bitcoin. But in the interview, if you go and watch it, they talk about exactly why that is not what they did, and I agree with it 1,000%. It makes me a bit annoyed that I hold miners that don't hodl Bitcoin and they just buy it as well. So what else do we have? Really interesting. We've known this for a while though. They're prepaid for all of their rigs basically past, well, I shouldn't say rigs, they've prepaid for their expansion past 50 exahash. That's pretty amazing. They've got options on the S21 XPs, amazing. So they could get to 63 exahash, I think it was. So this on the interview, they basically say they set the floor for the cheapest miners, which we can't argue with that. We've known that for a while. They've been doing that pretty well. And I think they even made a deal to upgrade some of the existing miners a while ago, which was pretty impressive. So they've got the cheapest cost basis in the world for their hodl balance, and that's not right now their profit margin, that's for their entire hodl balance. And I think people forget that in a bear market that's going to be such a bonus. Their balance will be the last to go underwater, so they'll be able to keep their rigs on for longer. They'll be able to eat up more of that market caps. So if this is your first cycle in Bitcoin, when the price of Bitcoin comes down, the older rigs get turned off because they're not efficient. It's basic economics. If you don't make profit on it, you stop producing. And you see in like the mines and stuff, if there's no profit, you just shut down the mine. If there's no profit in mining Bitcoin, you shut down the miner. And as that happens, that enables CleanSpark to mine more per day, as they're still scaling up with that buffer, if that makes sense. What else do we have in our notes here? They talked a bit about their yield plans. I've mentioned this a few times because they put like 2 whole sentences in their last earnings call about it. I was quite excited but frustrated that there was no extra information. They clarified a bit in this kind of interview about what it means, what it's going to look like. It's something that's going to be slow going. The market really hasn't developed. Derivatives are kind of new, barely there for crypto in general. They did say they're in talks with Coinbase, trying to get them to move a little bit faster on this. So that's exciting. But again, it's going to take a while for them to scale up into that. But even if, I think in another video Rex Finance did, he talked about even if they did do the, market risk-free 4%, that would be game-changing for the company. And no other company is considering this, as far as I'm aware, or has the ability to do it. What else do we have? Blah, 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 blah. So some of the kind of yield ideas were covered calls to protect on the downside. In the bear market, they talked about puts potentially. In the CleanSpark earnings call, not the last interview from Rex Finance, they also talked about providing liquidity to the OTCs, which could be interesting. So they're looking at a lot of ways to make yield on their stack and protecting them from having to sell their coins later on when we do enter the bear market. Although I do expect that they will be selling some of them, because if the market generally goes parabolic at some point, and normally CleanSpark are very good at timing that top. So it's one of the things I look out for when I'm thinking it's time to dump everything, is when CleanSpark starts to go. Blah blah blah. So Rex kindly did a load of maths for us, and he basically calculated that CleanSpark should be able to avoid net new dilution. That's hard to say. Until CleanSpark reaches around $33.67. Now, that's amazing. It's probably not going to be that high, because they'll probably close the deal out a little bit early, or they will refinance into something with a higher target or something like that. Or they could sell Bitcoin to pay things back. There's a lot of things they could do, and they might not, which means they might not take it to the end. So, but that's good. I mean, they're obviously very bullish on their own stock, so no one can say they're just kind of sitting on their hands, really, can they? I think that's about everything exciting. Obviously, there's a lot more detail in the interview, but I don't want to fill up this video for too long, because I also have some other news to talk about, which is relating to eToro. I think I hit the main points, though. Oh, I did want to say that, interestingly, one of the stipulations for I did write it here. So the funds that they approached, they made them sign very strict NDAs to reduce so when they come out with these bond offerings, information gets out, and then other companies short them, and they sort of front run that arbitrage thing as well, and they expect the drop. That didn't happen that much with CleanSpark. We saw price actually held fairly well on the initial announcement, and also built into the deal was a no short provision. So that was really interesting. So I think when we do bounce, CleanSpark, I would guess CleanSpark would be one of the fastest to bounce and recover as well. So that's interesting. But let's get on to the other news I wanted to talk about. Okay, so the other exciting news that I had was I've recently just passed my CC Level 3 certificate in wealth and investment management. Now, it's taken 5 days for me to get the certificate, and I didn't want to say I'd passed it without having the proof that I'd passed it. So proof is in the pudding. It's up there. Quite enjoyable to study for it. I would advise people go to the location to sit the exam, not doing it at home, because that was the most stressful part. Rolling on the floor, looking under the tables with the cameras, and got all flustered. And then I had technical issues one time. Just go, save yourself the hassle and go to the location to do the exam. But yeah, studying was quite insightful. A lot of the subject matter is quite dry. It relates more to bonds, life assurance, pensions, that kind of thing, and a lot of other bits. But if you've got free time, I do recommend reading the book. It's quite a big book. I should have had it to hand, but it's somewhere on my bookshelves. So definitely give yourself a more rounded knowledge, although it wouldn't specifically apply to a lot of people that just want to be really aggressive growth investors. How does this change things going forward? Good question. So as I want to go up to the next level of being a PI, that will make me an elite PI. So I need to have a $50,000 equity account balance on average to move up to that level and get that little green star, which would be amazing. Now, the plan is, we talked about it earlier, I'll put 5 to 10% monthly deposits in on the first and grow it up that way. There will be a large lump sum coming at some point, but that's not because of the Elite PI program. That is because I do still expect crypto to have a bear market. I mean, a lot of people are saying it's probably not. I'm still expecting one. I'm planning for one. And what I do is I roll out capital from my crypto account and I spread that against my other portfolios, so I can use that capital at other times and not wait a whole year for, start buying back in. So I think most of that money will end up coming to eToro to give myself a bit more margin for any bear market that does impact the stocks that I'm holding. As well, changes in the portfolio that are going to happen. A lot of my positions are quite small. As my equity grows, those positions are going to be difficult for new copiers to take advantage of. So my cost basis will look like it's rising slightly, but that's because I'm going to have to close out 2 small positions to make 1 large one and pay the fees on that. So it's not ideal. A lot of other brokers kind of combine all your new positions into one position, so that's not an issue, but eToro doesn't do it like that, so I've got to kind of work with the system on that one. It shouldn't have any really noticeable effects on the copiers. I will do it in a way so I can utilize the volatility of the market to offset the cost of fees anyway. So that should be fine. Other than that, if anyone's got any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below, and I'll probably make a separate video about my plan in the new year going forward. So we always need to look at Bitcoin because Bitcoin is the underlying asset that drives the price of CleanSpark and all the other miners and MicroStrategy. Price has actually been holding up really well. We kind of back with this orange line here has kind of been resistance. We had the tweezer top there, so it makes sense we pull back. This massive dump, though, was a little bit more violent than a lot of people expected. It's led to a lot of capitulation. Solana for sure, and a lot of the alts have been absolutely battered. But if we just measure the peak to bottom here, 15% move. 15% move, and people are saying it's the end of the world. Not sure why, but if that move is scaring you, then crypto is probably not for you. Price in a bull market for Bitcoin can fall back about 38%, and that normally happens. So it's an amazing buying dip if you want to trade the volatility on it. I'm not doing that. I just prefer just to hodl Bitcoin because the moves can be so violent and unpredictable. It's not like trading a stock where you can sort of get a feel for the price action. But I do like on this one that it's kind of carved out this volume shelf here. I like that. If that fails, we will be going down to kind of 89,000. And then under that, we've got the bull market band here. So do I think this is the bottom for crypto? It would be a great place for it to bounce, but there is certainly a little bit more to the downside. I think if we do break the 89,000, we're going to fall quite quickly through there. There's not much volume there. No one was really kind of buying there. But again, we're getting very close to the supply crunch, so it's just timing, and we'll just have to keep an eye on it. But if we take a look at the weekly chart here, again, should we be surprised we got a little bit of a sell-off here? We had such massive green weekly candles. It shouldn't really be too alarming. My targets overall for Bitcoin, I'm kind of still sitting in the 240, 280 range. That was moved up from the 120 to 240 range that I had before. I think the parabolic stage of this one's going to be quite violent. When that crunch comes, price is going to have a very large move. Happy to be wrong. Don't really trade Bitcoin specifically on price targets. I'm trading it more on price action and really looking out for the times when to start selling most things. I do sell off some of my Bitcoin. I don't just keep it all. Never have. Mainly because I'm a trader at heart. I prefer to be in and out of stuff and buy at a discount later on. But if we look at the chart here, these levels are kind of where I'm probably going to be scaling out. So 150, I think that's going to be a great area to take some risk off the table. The next Fibonacci level's at 206, but honestly, the psychological level of 200k after that, I'm probably going to be mostly out at that point of most things. Certainly, the more leveraged positions, or like the miners, they're going to be gone probably closer to the 150 level. when we start getting up to the 200k level, that's when I'll probably start selling Ethereum, Solana, those kind of things, and my kind of utility tokens for the VE33 stuff as well. But that's a different story. Let's take a look then at the macro. Okay, I'll promise we'll talk a little bit on the macro in a minute. This video is getting quite long, I know, but I've just got an update on my phone, a news announcement from CleanSpark. Quite exciting. So as a result of the the new deal and stuff they've got in place, and they're scaling up, they've just put, if you read further down the article, as a result, we are pleased to announce accelerated expected timing of the 50 exahash to the first half of the calendar year 2025. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Bitcoin treasury quickly approaching 10k of Bitcoin. I don't really know what else to say. Why do people hate this company? I don't know. I really don't understand it. But let's take a quick look at the macro. Today, Monday, nothing really exciting happens on Mondays. Blah 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 blah. Consumer confidence previous is expected to keep rising again. A lot of that's probably coming from time of year as well, though, so something to bear in mind. Tomorrow we've got the durable goods orders. That one we're expecting something down. Excluding transport, we're expecting an increase, which is a bit different to the numbers we got last week, which kind of transport, say export, transport was what made numbers look better. So let's be cautious. Red Book year over year, expecting 4.8%. Manufacturing index, again, manufacturing's not a strong suit right now. I think it's going to be in the next few years, though, with all the manufacturing Trump wants to bring back to the US. It's going to make it rough for a lot of other countries, though. Money supply has been increasing. Let's take a look at this one. I don't like that chart. Let's make it max. So we kind of... I don't want to do that. Sorry. We kind of had a dip, but now we're starting to ramp back up again, which is nice. A little bit of liquidity. Obviously, we had the pause last week, which was expected, and then the Fed was kind of more on the fence and a bit more hawkish than they had. I don't know why people were shocked by this. It was quite clear in the numbers that we didn't need to be as aggressive with rate cuts. There's a lot of fiscal stimulus going to come as well. We don't need to be stimulating fiscally and with monetary policy. That's just a recipe for inflation going boom again. But I think it's a prudent approach. I think it depends on the real estate sector and housing and stuff. Again, that is a lot of the inflation is still stuck up in that area. So I am actually not concerned about inflation at all, really. I think it's going to be offset by GDP and stuff like that. But, we'll see. It's 2025 in a few weeks. Is it a few weeks? Let me check the calendar. A week and 2 days we start the new year, so we'll see how it goes. Very exciting. That's a wrap. If you enjoyed this content, give it a like, share with your mum, your nan, your dad, your dog, and I will see you tomorrow for Tesla Tuesday.